Hi, Kemper here. I'm just making a little video on how to set up new camera raw defaults in Lightroom. Adobe's made some changes that's made this much different than it was in the past. If you follow my blog or any of my lectures and kind of things, you know how important I feel it is to make custom camera profiles. So this is going to show you how that you can create a camera raw default that incorporates your custom camera profiles. If you haven't found or watched my blog on the custom camera profiles, I recommend you do so. To do that, go to my website, which is lewiskemper.com, and go to the blog. And in the blog, if you click on the post-processing category, and scroll down to the how and why of creating custom profiles, and read this article and watch this video. Then you'll be able to not only create custom camera profiles, but after you finish watching this video, you'll also be able to set a camera raw default. So enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. With the latest version of Lightroom, Adobe has changed the way you set camera raw defaults. Well, what a camera raw default does is it preserves all those settings so that every time I import images from my camera, those settings are saved for me and already there, so I don't have to spend the time of moving all of those sliders. So the settings that I wanted to save would be my custom camera profile. I wanted to save my clarity and my vibrance settings. I wanted to save my sharpening settings, and I wanted to save my lens correction settings. I'm going to show you how to create a custom default that does all of that for you. So here, just to let you see, I'm in Lightroom Classic, and this all changed at the version 9.2 release. So every version from here on up should have the same thing that I'm going to show here. So here you can see I have a group of images that I've previously imported into Lightroom. And as I mentioned when I talked about creating the custom camera profiles, I made one for each of my camera bodies, even though I have the same camera model. If you definitely have different camera models, you want to make a custom camera profile for each camera model. And since it doesn't take very much time to do it, I made one for each particular camera body. So here I have an image taken with one body that I've labeled or named WAL. And if you look right here, if I hover over the image, in the file name it says WAL, and I set that up on my camera so that when I take a picture, that WAL automatically gets put on my file name. And if you look on the image next to this and I hover over, you'll see it says TEL in the file name. And again, that's something I set up in my camera menus, and you can change the lettering in your camera menus. So now I know which particular camera is which. So with this image right here, again, I want to preserve those settings that I just mentioned. And you do that now by creating a custom preset first. So if I go into the Develop module, and I want to make sure that it's using the camera profile that I made. So this is the one for the WAL lens. That's the profile. I want my clarity and my vibrance settings to be maintained. I want to go to the Detail tab and make sure it's the settings that I like to use at 51, 50, 50 that I described previously in these videos. I want to make sure my noise reduction luminance is set to 0. And then I want to go down to the lens corrections, and I want to make sure that remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections are checked. Now I need to save those things as a preset. So in the Develop module, if you go over on the left-hand side, you have presets. And if I open up the presets, I have some presets that were shipped from Adobe that they give you, and then you can create your own user presets. So we're going to create a user preset. So I'm going to go up here to the plus and hit Create Preset. by default, all of these are checked. I'm going to hit check none, and the only things I want to preserve are my treatment and profile. I want to preserve my clarity, my sharpening, my vibrance, and my lens corrections. Process version is automatically checked, and when you do check none, that stays checked. So you leave that checked. So those are the things that I want to preserve for all the images that I import in the future in Lightroom. So I'm going to name this one, and this is Nikon D850, and this was the camera that I called WAL, and I'm going to hit create. Now I'm going to click over to the image done with the other camera, and you can see the only real difference is that it's using a different camera profile. Again, my clarity and my vibrance numbers are set. My detail numbers are set. My noise reduction's at 0. And my lens correction has the remove chromatic aberration and the profile corrections turned on. So I'm going to now go over here to presets again and hit create preset. And all the ones that I just previously used were checked, so that's just fine. Now I just have to name this one Nikon D850, and I didn't put a space last time, so I won't put a space. Whoops. Sorry, typo error here. And hit create. So now if we look down here in my user presets and scroll all the way down to Nikon, I've got my TEL and my WAL preset that we just created. Now I have to make those presets part of the new defaults. So to do that in the current versions of Lightroom, you have to go to the preferences. So on a Mac, the preferences are found under the Lightroom Classic, down to preferences. If I were on a PC, my preferences would be found under the edit menu. So I'm going to go down to the preferences and open preferences, and this dialog box comes up. The way it's set up right now is it's going to give me the Adobe default, which means it would use Adobe Color as my camera profile. My sharpening settings would be different than the numbers that I prescribed, and those lens corrections would not be turned on, and my vibrance and my clarity sliders would be set at 0. So I don't want that. I want to use defaults that are specific to a camera model. So if I check this on, you notice the bottom part of the dialog box is ghosted right now. If I check this on, that becomes active. So if you just have two different camera models, but not the same model with different serial numbers, you could just choose your camera model from the list. So if you had, let's say you had a Nikon 1DS and a Nikon 1DX, you could choose those here and create your profiles would have been made just for those particular cameras. I have two of the same body, so what I'm going to do is choose the Nikon D850, but then I'm going to say to show serial number. And you can see it's showing the serial numbers of my cameras, and it lists 3 of them because I actually borrowed somebody's Nikon one time to test it before I bought mine. So my TEL camera is the one with the serial number of 30, this one right here that ends in 5150. That's my telephoto camera. So now what I want to do is I want to come down here to the default, and I don't want that Adobe default, which is Adobe Color. I want to come down to that preset that I just created. Now this is going to scroll down past your screen when I hit user preset because I have so many past presets that I've made for other things. But I'm going to scroll down all the way down here to my Nikon TEL that you can't see, but it pops up here in this place. Now what I have to do is I have to tell it to create that default. So it's going to take that serial number and use that preset that we created and create a default for me. Now what I want to do is I want to select my other camera, and that's the WAL camera. Then go back down here to my user preset, and again this is going to go down off your screen, and select my WAL and hit create default. And now I have these defaults set for these particular cameras. And now we'll test it and see if this worked. So I'm going to close that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm sticking a card in my card reader, which should bring up the import dialog box. And here are some images that are on the card. And I'm going to uncheck all of these images and just select one here. And I think this one might be imported, so I'm going to select the second one. And I'm just going to, since I'm doing this, I might as well do it the way I normally would. So I'm going to add my custom text for that one. I'm going to apply the keyword that would apply to this image, Skagit River. And I'm going to check my destination, which is on my Drobo in my 2020 folder. And I'm going to ask it to import that one image for me. And there it imported that image. And when I select that image, if I go to the Develop module and we check here, you can see that the Remove Chromatic Aberration and the Profile Correction was checked, and it knew exactly which lens was on the camera at the time. If I go to the Detail tab, you can see my 51-50-50 is set. And if I go to the Basic tab, it's using the correct profile for that camera. And it has my clarity and my vibrance set. So it's doing exactly what we wanted. So from now on, whenever I import images with this particular camera body, it's going to be using this profile. And when I import images from the other camera body, it will be using the other profile made for that particular camera body. And that's how you set a custom RAW default in the latest versions of Lightroom.